Welcome to another episode of Rise and Thrive Women, journeying from surviving to thriving after abuse. We're your hosts, Susie and Heather, and we're so honored you're here. If you've experienced the heartache of toxic relationships, you know the feeling of feeling lost, broken, and unsure of where to turn next. And this podcast is for you.
We're here to inspire, educate, and empower women like you, no matter where you are on your healing journey. Together, we're going to change misconceptions surrounding domestic abuse, explore practical solutions, and listen to incredible survivor stories that remind us all that there is a brighter, better future waiting for you. It is time to rise, thrive, and choose yourself. Let's begin this healing journey together.
Yay! Here we are. How are you doing, Heather?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Have you been having a good week?
Yes. Running away from news headlines, all just dodging them left and right.
I hear you. It's hard to avoid, isn't it? It is in our face.
This
constantly.
Show gives me so much to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly.
So today, Susie and I are going to be sharing some of our experiences as coaches, kind of what it looks like and how we help clients navigate the impacts of narcissistic abuse. There seems to be a very common path that almost every single one of our clients navigate. And it doesn't, I can talk to a new client or a person that I met on the street that has gone through the same experience. The path is very consistent in most every survivor's story. So each phase of this path, I think, is different, but it serves a very important role in our mindset, and it kind of makes the shifts necessary to leave and then move into healing from the abuse, which is a new phase all in itself. We're not going to cover that, but I'll hand it over to Susie to talk more about those phases.
Yeah, no, it's such a real thing. And you were the one, I think, that originally put this information together for our Road to Recovery workshop when it comes to these different paths of awareness. And it is so, it rings so true in these relationships. So I'm really excited to talk about it today. Everybody has their own journey, and they may stay in one stage longer than others. Some people find themselves living in these certain stages for years. I know, as I was kind of preparing for this, I was thinking about how I lived in some of these stages for so long. So I think it's good for people just to have that awareness, and I'm really excited to talk about this today. So I'm going to pull up a slide that is actually part of our Road to Recovery workshop. And these are the stages that we're going to be talking about today. We call it the path of awareness, like you mentioned. So stage number 1 is the denial stage, and we're going to get into what each of these stages looks like in more detail, but I'm just going to quickly go through them. So first stage is denial. Second stage is awareness. And then you move into a stage of understanding, followed by acceptance, and then finally taking some action on the situation. So I think we were going to, just kind of go through each stage individually. You and I will kind of just go back and forth here, but I think I'll turn it over to you first to talk about the denial stage, if you want to just kick that one off.
Yeah, sure. And just to, I guess, elaborate on the action. Action is kind of the phase where victims start to kind of plan their escape and evaluate like what healing strategy is best for them, and start to kind of mentally prepare for that post-separation abuse I think the fear of that is what keeps a lot of people kind of trapped in the relationship initially. So just so everyone is aware, these are phases like when you're still in active abuse.
Yeah.
And so with denial comes when clients come to me and they are fearful that they may be in an abusive relationship or they may be in a narcissistic relationship. I listen to cues of self-gaslighting, right? And that sounds a whole lot like, I know I probably sound crazy, but I really do worry he's watching me. And believe it or not, almost every client that I've talked to suffers from some form of paranoia that they're being listened to or they're being watched, and they think that they're going to sound crazy. And to someone who isn't familiar with this abuse, it may sound crazy because we just can't fathom the thought of someone, that we live with is making us feel so fearful that they're watching our moves. But these sort of abusers do, right? Like, I've talked to some clients that have had abusers set up different cameras or even microphones around their house, and have found them. First, they suspect that they're being listened to because it's like they'll be by themselves saying different things. And then, it'll come up in a conversation and she's like, how did he know that? Like, is he listening?
Yeah.
And so we've had some people, sorry, I got off on a tangent there, but
No, I've had that experience too with clients who have found tracking devices on their cars and all kinds of things. And it's like, okay, I wasn't crazy.
yeah.
I'm being monitored.
I want to normalize that for people who are fearful that they may be in abuse. That's self-gaslighting. Like, if you really have a fear that you're being watched or listened to or tracked, that's a valid concern and fear. I also see a lot of shame on women's faces when I'm meeting with them and they feel like I'm judging them. If they tell me about an instant when they maybe lost their cool, right? Narcissistic abusers are very good at pushing certain buttons to get emotional reactions out of you.
Right.
So I also see a lot of shame when they feel like they've reacted irrationally. What else?
Yeah, it's actually like called reactive abuse that can actually happen when somebody's been pushed so far.
Yep. I just
So,
say, so clients in this phase typically come to me claiming that they need help controlling themselves, right? Like, if I could just fix myself so that I don't react this way or I don't feel this way anymore, everything will be better. And so, because they want to avoid conflict and then kind of deny the thought that their abuser had intent to make them react in that way.
right. Yeah, and typically not ready at that point for change or identifying that that's something that they may need to do. It's very early days
Yeah.
in the process.
The only thing I'd add to that is I feel like I kind of beat that horse, but there's also people, I guess, in the denial phase will also replace good behaviors or I guess counteract bad behavior for good ones. Like, but he helps with the bills, or he sends me flowers and celebrates special occasions like no other person has, or he's a good dad, or she's a good mom. Sorry, most of my clients are women. I'm not rejecting I'm not rejecting the idea that women aren't abusers. But I want to also emphasize that people in the denial phase are very much still kind of protecting the abusive person. And if you know someone that is in a relationship that you're fearful that they may be in an abusive relationship and they are saying things like this, or you suspect they are in this phase, I would say this is a very critical phase for you to kind of take a back seat and be there for them when you can without giving opinions, because it's a very critical phase where you could potentially run them further into the abuser's arms because they don't want to hear it.
Yeah, they're not ready. They're not ready for change or to even acknowledge it at that point. And
they don't believe it.
Right. And something else that came to my mind too, typically people in this stage are very isolated. You most likely, if you're in this stage, you haven't opened up to anyone about what's happening, or maybe very few people or one other person or something like that. So without having that support or somebody that you've confided in, I think it just keeps you in that denial phase even longer. When you finally do find someone you can open up to, I think that in and of itself can move you into this path of becoming more aware, because you get some validation and you know something's not right, but you just sometimes need to hear that from somebody else too.
For sure.
So, yeah. should we move on to the
Yep,
awareness
it's all
stage?
yours.
So yeah, so in this phase, I would say the individual is starting to feel like something is off. They might see the signs of abuse, but they don't have the language yet to really describe what it is or understand what it is. There might be some beginning stages of researching, Googling, starting to seek some of that validation that this experience and what's happening is not normal. But there's still tons of confusion. There's that, cognitive dissonance where you're having these polarizing feelings of like something's not right, I'm unhappy, I deserve better, with still holding out hope that the abuser will change because they tell you that they will, repeatedly. So there's that cognitive dissonance, that confusion, that feeling of just kind of being on the fence and not really ready to make a big change in your life. And I think overall, just a feeling like something's out of alignment with your values. You had envisioned what you think a good, healthy relationship would look like, and that's what you deserve, but you realize that you're not getting that. So I think those are kind of those beginning stages. And what I typically hear from clients in this stage, or from people who are experiencing abuse, is just, I don't feel like I can leave, but I also don't feel like I can continue to live this way. Again, it's that feeling of just something's not right, but not quite being ready still to take action. So anything else you'd add to that?
I love that you mentioned this is when people start to Google.
Yeah, I remember doing that myself.
Do you remember the interview we had with Sabrina? So we're going to have Sabrina on the show here in a month, I think. I think she'll be on in sometime in April. And she's an amazing woman with an incredible story. She's the CEO of Her Nation. And her big story, I guess the start of her story is she started Googling, why does my boyfriend bully me? Right. She hadn't identified any sort of abuse. It was just like,
right.
Man,
right.
he's an asshole. Why is he so mean to me?
Right.
She started Googling, why is my boyfriend a bully? And that led her into narcissistic abuse research. And she started to make connections with what was happening to her in her relationship. So.
Yeah. I remember coming across some quizzes that were about, and this was like 10 plus years ago, before narcissism and narcissistic abuse were even a thing. So that didn't come up at all in my results at that time. But I remember the initial quizzes around, like, is this emotional abuse? Is this verbal abuse? And being like, oh, okay, this is helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely a start of some research and understanding in that phase, but we'll move into understanding if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So in understanding, so people in this phase come seeking validation, right? They've either talked to a family member or they got on the Google machine and started to learn about abuse tactics and identifying their specific abuse cycles. And they're still kind of questioning their experience and asking questions like, is this right? Or is this abuse? Or do I sound crazy? Or is this wrong? Because in this phase, depending on how long you've been in the relationship, it's if you're typically isolated, you've been gaslit and manipulated for so long that any sort of emotional or you've built an emotional reliance on them, and they've become your voice of reason, right? And so when you get used to coming to a certain person or having the same conflict with this person, you are used to being gaslit. And so when you start to seek validation outside of that person, your natural instinct is to say, I feel in my core that this is wrong and this shouldn't be happening, but there's also another voice telling me that I'm crazy. Am I crazy? Is this wrong? Should I not feel this way? And so typically whenever I meet with people in this phase, that's kind of the stuff that they're saying, where they know that they can't go on like this and they have to do something about it, because they know that in their core, it's not right. They aren't quite sure how to handle it. Right. And that's typically when we start, moving into setting boundaries to where they can have some place of mental sanity.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think this is a critical phase in if someone is in this phase to start reaching out and start finding that support system, those supportive people, finding somebody who is knowledgeable about abuse. If you've started to identify this is what I'm experiencing,
Yeah.
it is really important that you find a safe support group, a safe therapist or trauma informed, narcissistic abuse informed coach that can help you start to help you make sense of it all. So
Yeah. Speaking of
yes.
communities, we typically plug this in the end, but if you're watching and you would like to benefit from a free online community, we do have Rise and Thrive Women. It's a free Facebook group, and Susie and I host monthly meetings on Zoom where you can have some one-on-one support. And, we've got about 350 members in there right now. So we'd love to have you. We'd love to add you to that group.
Yes, come hang out with us over there.
Yeah.
And I see Hillary's watching. Hi, Hillary. Thank you for
Hey, Hillary.
your compliment. You love the chart. Thank you. We work hard on our infographics. So
yes, we do.
And it sounds like you have been along this journey as well. So thanks for joining us.
Our corporate came out today.
I did. I love to nerd out with slides. It's my favorite. Okay, so we move into then from understanding into the acceptance phase. So in this phase, there's that full understanding that the behavior that you're experiencing from the abuser is destructive. You start to reclaim some of that power that you may have lost over the course of the relationship. I see a lot in this phase when I work with clients, a lot of just weighing pros and cons. Leaving a relationship is always a big decision, but I feel like when you're in the thick of abuse, it can feel even more daunting. So a really helpful exercise in this phase is to kind of weigh your pros and cons of staying versus leaving. There's also the phase of just addressing whatever obstacles you feel are in your way, whether it's financial, maybe you need to get employment in order to leave, building your support group, whatever obstacles are in your way, those are starting to get addressed. And the stages of starting to form that exit plan can happen as well. And I also think there's that visioning, a little bit of looking ahead to what your life could look like outside of that relationship without that person. So I think those are kind of the key elements or key things that are happening in that acceptance phase. Trying to see what else I had here. I think just there's a lot of mental preparation happening in this phase, like I mentioned, just wrapping your head around the idea of leaving and what it would take. There's a lot of questioning I hear from women in this phase of whether or not they can make it on their own, if they're strong enough to make it. And you are, if you're listening. Yeah. But those are kind of some of the things that are happening internally with people in that stage. Is there anything that I've missed there?
I don't think you missed anything. I just, in that phase, people are either completely lowering expectations, right? Like in the acceptance phase, I'd say if you're committed to staying, you have accepted the person that you're with and you know kind of what to expect and you completely lower your expectations. And I have a theory of what happens when that happens. But
do you want to talk about it?
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of people get into that phase and they're so worn down that their abusers will either like realize that they have them in this hold position and they're not going to go anywhere. And so that like they'll start cheating and, like it's almost as if the abuse tactics get worse and they get stronger because they feel like they've got their like they're at that lowest low. And
right.
So the abuse increases, like you've lowered your expectations are on the floor, but now it's like gotten to the abuse escalates to a point where you can't even ignore it anymore. So, and then you end up having to leave anyway, or being discarded. And then so if you aren't lowering your expectations, like that's whenever you're starting to actually visualize your life without them. Like
Right.
you're looking at apartments or you're looking at homes and you're starting to put numbers together. You're starting to wonder, like, can I do this for myself? Can I do this by myself?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the individual who's in the relationship who has accepted it for what it is and has no plans on leaving, because we know that that is a very real situation. We respect that. Like, we don't shame or, criticize anybody who is in that situation, who knows, I just have to make this work. I've worked with many clients who are in that situation for a number of reasons that they choose to just stay. But there are things that can be done and that can happen in that phase to try to make your life more enjoyable, to reclaim some of that power that you've lost, to learn how to set boundaries and just live the best life that you can live under that scenario. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's
It
the
is a
reality
very real
for some.
reality. It's an
Mhm.
unfortunate reality, but it is a very real one or a real
Yeah.
scenario that happens more often than not, I think. So
Yeah, for sure. All right. Shall
So
we talk about action?
action is you've accepted it, you've visualized, and you've started to kind of assess and plan. And action is whenever you actually put those plans into motion and you start figuring out, if you are with a more overt type abusive person and you're worried about your physical safety, you start working on your safety plans, right?
Mhm.
Physical safety plans. There are also,
Yep.
financial safety plans.
Mhm.
And so you start to act on those, whether it is, serving papers and going and staying in a hotel or with a friend or family member until, however long it takes for things to kind of settle down. Whether you think that you're going to need a protective order, like you start to work through what those safety plans are going to look like and start
Mhm.
acting on them.
Yeah. And sorry to interrupt, Heather. I have a free exit plan on my website. If anyone's interested in getting that, just go
Oh,
to
awesome.
susiemillerwendell.com, and I think it's right at the top, free exit plan checklist. So it will cover those things that you just mentioned. So I just wanted to mention that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, go get that plan.
Yes.
So then you start looking, and then you're acting on healing strategies. In this phase, healing strategies, lower your expectations
Yeah.
because, I mean, at this point, you just need to make sure that you are balancing your nervous system, that you are doing what you need to do to stay calm, doing what you need to do to find grace. I would even probably suggest cutting people off that you think are going to side with the abuser. It happens. And that alone can be completely detrimental to someone's nervous system, because on top of leaving in your whole, currently familiar world is in a million pieces, and then then you have to worry about people citing or giving information to the abusive person. So I would even say, if you feel like you maybe can't trust somebody, to cut them off for a little bit. And then you go through some of those yucky endings, but with a very bright future ahead of you. I will say,
Yes.
in the action phase, it takes a lot of, I would say it takes months to get through this path. And depending on how many times you reconcile, it can be a cycle over, and it can be a yearly cycle.
Yeah.
So it can take several months to get through this. And it's that yucky endings bullet that keeps people from acting, because it's almost like the longer you stay, the harder it is to leave, because it makes it impossible for an abusive, entitled person to let you go or accept the rejection.
Mhm.
And I would also like to call out anyone who has been discarded in this phase too. It may be slightly easier for someone who is, I don't want to minimize that because it can be detrimental to be discarded. But I would say people that have gone through the reverse scenario and they've been discarded, action is typically when they mentally prepare themselves to go no contact and to finally stop chasing them. Like, I'm going to stop chasing this person who has put me through hell for however many years it's been. And I'm going to start building my self-worth into what it was and what it should be.
For sure. Yeah, no, I think you summed up that phase really well. Um, I would second what you said about when it comes to just like healing and starting to explore that. It is a very basic healing strategy that you should be doing at that point. It's really just kind of focusing on starting to get your ducks in a row and making sure when it comes to just taking care of yourself and doing the basics, getting enough sleep, eating regular meals, doing some activity, throughout the week that helps you stay calm, like you said, and helps you just manage all these uncomfortable emotions that are coming up. But
well, a lot of people have been, I think a lot of people have felt so oppressed throughout the relationship that if they're impatient like me, they're in a hurry to make a comeback or prove something to themselves and the rest of the world, and just prove to everybody, that you haven't been broken, right? Like the mindset is, you're not going to break me. And we can overwhelm ourselves with healing strategies and want to do it all at the same time. And some of that is good in theory, but I will say that when you get caught up into excessively trying to work out and focus on your diet, focus on your workout routine, focus on like me time and spa time and like everybody wants to go out and spend time with people that they haven't been able to. It gets overwhelming and you don't have time to just sit with what's happening. And what ends up happening is it bubbles over time. It'll bubble and it'll explode. Which is also fine. If you can avoid it, like if you can avoid it.
I feel like I feel seen. I've been there.
I'm not talking from experience at all.
No. Yeah. No, that's very, very true. I'm curious, I don't know if you're willing to share, do you feel like which of these phases did you feel like you lived in the longest?
Acceptance.
Okay.
Acceptance. I really honestly, if you've read my book, you know what it took for me to leave. And I spent a lot of time lowering my expectations because I'm I can be emotional, right? Like we're all emotional creatures, but for the most part, like I'm so impatient that I don't like I'm a solution focused person, right? Like how do we fix this problem? Because if you ever want to drive me batshit crazy, like give me the same problem to solve over and over and over again. Like that is how you drive me to insanity. I mean, we all know the definition of insanity, right? So I will say that I lost a lot of sanity. And that, so logical Heather was just like, all right, we've done everything we can to fix it from this angle and that angle. And the only solution is if this thing happens right here and this thing right here, I have no control over. So what we're going to do is we're just going to lower our expectations.
Yeah. It's like doing the limbo till you fall flat on your butt.
Or you break your back.
Exactly. Yep. Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, I look at this and I think I lived in that stage of understanding, like having full understanding that this was not okay. I get it. It's abuse and I know it's affecting me, but I really struggled to get out of that phase and move forward to action. So I don't know, probably understanding, acceptance. I spent like 10 years in those phases.
Yeah.
But I always look back and I think I would do it again if, I would make that decision over and over again for the freedom that I have now and the peace and happiness I have now. So if you are, looking ahead and with fear and that, fearing those yucky endings and what comes of it, you can get through it. It is hard. There are a lot
Not
of hard
easy.
things that can
Yeah.
happen after you leave. And like you mentioned, that post-separation abuse can be really, really difficult, but it's worth it. So in case you needed to hear that today, I
It's
just wanted to say that.
telling too, right? I
Yeah.
think I will say post-separation abuse is it's detrimental, right? It's like, oh my God, I cannot believe this is happening. What, like, where did I go wrong? But I will, and it's really hard to see the benefits when you're in the middle of it. But if anything, if this helps anyone listening, at least one positive thing that comes from post-separation abuse is you weren't wrong about who you thought this person was. You were not wrong. And post-separation abuse is a phase where, just to get through it, understand that it is temporary. I mean, setting hard boundaries and no contact if you can. It's going to be the key of getting to peace faster. But if anything, I will say it should be validating in knowing that you made the right decision and a person who really truly loved you and cared about your mental and emotional and physical well-being. And if you have kids with them, the same, wouldn't treat you that way.
Right.
So,
yeah, I truly see that person for who they are.
Yep.
The mask fully comes off.
You can't unsee it. You cannot unsee it.
No, you can't. So, okay. I see a few people are watching, so I just want to ask anybody out there who has questions. We are kind of getting to the tail end here. Feel free to drop your questions in the comments, and we would love to answer those before we are done for the day. But if you are, if this resonates with you and you feel like you could use some support in navigating these different phases, helping to look ahead, planning exit strategies, doing pros and cons exercises, all those things Heather and I love to help support people with. I have dropped the links to our calendars where you can book time with us in the show notes. Heather, I think you've done the same over on your YouTube channel.
Yep.
And she's already mentioned our Rise and Thrive Women community. Go check that out over on Facebook. I've linked that within my notes as well. We would love to have you over there. And then we mentioned really early on, the slide that we showed today during this live was from our Road to Recovery workshop that we do. I think we do that. We're doing that one. When is that one that we're going to be doing live again?
I don't think we have that
maybe,
one.
or no, we don't have that one scheduled. Okay. Well, we have a replay from the last one that we did that you can actually purchase. So I have that linked in my show notes, and Heather does as well. When you purchase the replay of that workshop, you also receive a free copy of my book, Nurturing After Narcissism, Raising Thriving and Resilient Children After Divorcing a Narcissist. And you receive Heather's book as well. Triumph Over, remind me your book title again.
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah. Sorry, my brain.
No, it's fine. I hadn't planned.
Finding Your Power.
Here we go. Finding Your Power Through Trauma, the 9-step guide of healing from toxic or narcissistic relationships. So we'll give you an e-copy if you are interested in buying the Road to Recovery replay. It's available in the comments. We also
it's a really
have
great
codependency one coming up in March. We haven't, that one's not pre-recorded. It'll be live. So if you aren't following us, go ahead and make sure you subscribe so that you get updates on when that's coming. It'll be the 22nd of next month is when we're hosting that one.
Yes. So excited. We already have a lot of ladies within Rise and Thrive who are planning on attending that. So it should be really good. Great. All right. Did you see any questions come through?
I don't. So I'll go ahead and close it out.
Okay.
So thank you all for joining us on this episode of Rise and Thrive Women. We hope today's conversation has inspired you to take charge of your healing journey, whether it's a new perspective, renewed hope, or the courage to move forward. It's something worth celebrating.
And remember, your story is still unfolding and your past does not define you. Within you lies strength, power, and limitless potential. So embrace it. Trust and follow your intuition with courage. Be bold, be brave, and always trust yourself. Until we meet again, take care, rise above, and thrive. You've got this.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.